What would you do if the one person who meant everything to you was suddenly gone? Would you move on? Forget? Or would you stay? ... No matter what. There's a cemetery just outside a small town where something impossible has been happening for years. A dog, a grave, and a promise that death couldn't break. The groundskeeper thought he was seeing things at first. A German shepherd, sitting perfectly still beside a soldier's headstone. He figured the dog would wander off by evening, but when he came back the next morning, ... the dog was still there. Same spot. Same grave. Rain poured down that week. Then the heat came. Then snow. The dog never moved. People tried everything. They yelled at him, waved their arms, even called animal control. But every time someone got close, the dog would lower his head, pin his ears back, and let out a growl that said one thing: "I'm not leaving." So they stopped trying, and they gave him a name: Shadow. Because that's what he became. A silent, loyal shadow guarding one man's memory like it was the only thing left in the world. Main content now. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. If this story is already hitting you in the chest, go ahead and hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories reach. Alright, let's keep going. The grave belonged to a man named Sergeant Mark Turner. Mark wasn't just any soldier. He'd done 2 full tours overseas, seen things most of us can't even imagine, and came home a decorated veteran. But his last mission, that's the one that took him. He was leading his squad through hostile territory when they got ambushed. Gunfire from every direction. Chaos. Screaming. And in the middle of it all, Mark made a choice. He threw himself into the line of fire to give his team a chance to escape. And they did. Every single one of them made it out alive. But Mark didn't. Well, ... not alone. Anyway, because right there with him, through the smoke and the bullets and the blood, was his canine partner, a German shepherd named Ranger. Ranger had been with Mark for 3 years. They'd trained together, deployed together, survived together. In the military, those dogs aren't just pets. They're brothers. And when Mark fell, Ranger stayed by his side until help arrived. He wouldn't let anyone near him. Not the medics, not the other soldiers, just him and Mark. That's the bond they had. After the funeral, the plan was simple. Ranger would be rehomed, maybe retired to a veteran's family, maybe reassigned. That's how it usually works. But the night before, he was supposed to be transferred. Something happened. Ranger broke out. The shelter staff came in the next morning and found the kennel door bent, the latch forced open, and the dog ... gone. They searched everywhere, put up flyers, called local vets. Nothing. 2 days later, a groundskeeper at the cemetery found him, sitting right there, at Mark's grave. Now here's the thing. Ranger had never been to that cemetery before. He wasn't at the funeral. He didn't ride in the procession. So how did he find it? How did he know exactly which grave was Mark's? Nobody knows. But he did. And once he got there, he refused to leave. At first, people thought it was temporary. Dogs grieve, right? Maybe he just needed time. But days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And Ranger stayed. The local newspaper caught wind of this story and ran a piece titled "The Dog Who Woe and Let Go." People started showing up. Some brought flowers, some brought dog food, water, toys, blankets. But here's the strange part. Ranger wouldn't touch any of it, unless it was placed right next to the headstone. If you left food 10 feet away, he'd ignore it. But if you set it beside Mark's name, he'd eat. Then he'd go right back to his post. Like he was on duty, like he still had a job to do. People tried to pet him. He'd pull away. They tried to coax him into a car. He'd growl. It wasn't aggression. It was... ... protection. He was protecting Mark. Or maybe he was protecting the memory. Then one afternoon, something changed. A little girl walked into the cemetery alone. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. She was clutching a folded American flag in both hands, the kind they give to families at military funerals. Her name was Lucy. And that grave, that was her father's. She walked slowly, her shoes crunching on the gravel path, until she reached the stone. Then she knelt down, ran her tiny fingers over the letters carved into the granite, and whispered, "Hi, Daddy. I miss you." Ranger's ears shot up. One of the cemetery staff saw her and panicked. He started rushing over, waving his arms. "Sweetheart, don't get too close. That dog, he's not safe. EDOES. And single quotes T ... But before he could finish, Ranger stood up, walked over to Lucy, and sat down, right beside her. No growling, no pulling away, just ... Lucy looked at him. Her eyes were red, but she smiled. "You were his best friend, huh?" she said softly, and then she reached out and touched his fur. Ranger let out a long, quiet whine, the kind that sounds like it's coming from somewhere deep inside. And then he laid his head in her lap. The groundskeeper stopped in his tracks. People walking by froze. Some of them started crying, because in that moment, it wasn't just a dog in a grave anymore. It was a promise kept, a bond that didn't end. From that day forward, Ranger changed. He still stayed at the grave, still kept watch, but now he let people come close. A few months later, the local veterans group raised money to build something special, a bronze statue, life-sized. A soldier kneeling beside his dog, hand on the animal's head, both of them looking forward. They placed it right next to Mark's grave, and on the dog's collar, they engraved one word, Ranger. The day they unveiled it, Lucy was there. So was Ranger. When the cloth came off, and he saw it, he walked up to the statue, sniffed it once, then lay down beside it, like he finally understood, like he knew Mark was honored, that he hadn't been forgotten. And here's the thing. Ranger still shows up, every single day, rain or shine, snow or heat. Sometimes Lucy visits after school. She'll sit on the grass with her homework, reading aloud while Ranger lies beside her. She'll tell him about her day, about her friends, about things she wishes she could tell her dad. And Ranger listens, because that's what he does. That's what he's always done. People say dogs don't understand death, that they don't feel loss the way we do. But if you've ever seen the way Ranger sits at that grave, ears forward, eyes steady, like he's still waiting for orders that will never come, you'd know that's not true. He understands. He just chooses not to leave. Closing, they say, loyalty dies when the heart stops beating. But maybe that's not true. Maybe some bonds are woven so deep, so strong, that not even death can cut them. Because when the sun sets over that quiet cemetery, when the wind picks up and the flag waves gently against the sky, there's always one shadow that remains. The soldier's name is carved in stone, but his best friend made sure it would never fade. So, if this story moved you, if it reminded you what real loyalty looks like, dome a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment and tell me, have you ever known a bond like this? And don't forget to subscribe, because we've got more stories coming your way. Stories that prove love doesn't end when life does. Thanks for being here, and remember, the best way to honor the ones we've lost is to never stop telling their story.